Okay, let's bow in. And welcome to the Buddhist Path of Awakening class on Francesca Fremantle's book, Luminous Emptiness, about the Tibetan Book of the Dead, or Liberation Through Hearing, as she prefers to call it. We're right in the middle of the chapter titled Wrathful Compassion. I think it's chapter 14, which deals with the appearance of the wrathful deities in the Bardo. But before we talk about the book, I wanted to say a few things that I hope are helpful and not misleading about practice of meditation and how this both could prepare us for what we experience in the Bardo, as well as what we experience in our lives now, as well as a little bit of something about the notion of transmutation, which comes up quite a bit in this chapter and throughout the book, actually. So when I think about meditation, I recall, and I know I've shared this before, recall being part of a group interview with the 16th Karmapa back in 1980 in Boulder, on his last visit to the United States, his last tour. And it was a group interview, and before it began, he asked people, he said he wanted to ask a question. And he asked people, what is meditation like for you? And after some silence, somebody was brave enough to answer and said, I feel that when I meditate, I open myself to myself. And he was very pleased with this answer. Through his translator, he said, that's very good. That's exactly how it should be, that we open ourselves to ourselves. And I think it's important to think a little bit about that, because what does that mean? And when we begin practicing meditation, what we discover is that a lot of the time we're not open to ourselves, that we're distracted, we're absorbed in thoughts and fantasies. We get stuck on all kinds of reference points and fixed points of view that inhibit us, and that we even come to identify with our thoughts in ways that sometimes actually are quite painful. And some of these can be fairly coarse and obvious to us, and some are fairly subtle. But in meditation, which is really ultimately a practice of letting go, we come to open ourselves to ourselves. And with this, in particular, thinking of another thing that I was told once about meditation practice, is that in meditation practice, we're not trying to stop thoughts, but we are changing our attitude and activity toward them. And to think about what that means a little bit, what we come to discover in meditation is that oftentimes we take our thoughts to be real in a way that they're not. And we see that they're not real because they fade away. What's so important one day is not even worth a thought the next, sometimes not even the next day, in the next moment. We come to see that as we practice and as we develop in our meditation practice, more and more we come to see thoughts as transparent. We see that when we take thoughts to be real, that they tend to take on a compelling quality, and we get caught up. I think Pema Chodron calls it Trenpa, hook. We get hooked. We get caught up in thoughts, and we just get lost. When that happens, we're not seeing thoughts as thoughts. We're seeing thoughts as being real in a way that they're not, or more real than they need to be, particularly during the practice of meditation. In daily life, there are thoughts we need to attend to. We have to pay bills and go to work or do whatever it is that we need to do. But in particular in meditation, which if you remember is a bardo in its own right, we can see thoughts as thoughts. And with that, what we develop as we practice, and it's always funny to talk about things in terms of developing, because actually in meditation, we're making no effort at all. We're letting go of any effort to develop anything. So it's more the things develop, things change, precisely because we're not trying to change anything, which is paradoxical, but that's how it seems to work. That what we learn to do over time is that we're able to accommodate whatever we experience in awareness. that whatever thoughts arise, we can simply see them and let them come and go as they will. Due to our respective personal histories, some thoughts will have much more power than others. It's easier to see the transparency of some thoughts that we're less attached to. It can be much more difficult to see the transparency or the lack of solidity of the thoughts that we really identify with. But overall, meditation practice is increasingly, again and again, a process of letting go, opening up, and just seeing what's there. And as we do this, again, more and more, we see that we can actually accommodate things in our experience without needing to change them, without needing to make things different, without needing to react in any one particular way. And again, this is in the context of meditation practice. In daily life, things aren't that way, but in the context of meditation practice, we come to see this. In the chant that we do in the morning and the evening, the Kagyu lineage chant, it's said that the essence of thoughts is Dharmakaya. And again, it's not that thoughts themselves are the Dharmakaya, but that the essence of thoughts is Dharmakaya. So the question then is, what does it mean by essence? And here we have to use words, but ultimately what it comes down to is something that ultimately is really inexpressible. But it's actually the title of this book, that the essence of thoughts is luminous emptiness. We see the emptiness. If we don't see the emptiness directly, we can at least intuit it by seeing how thoughts come and go. And the luminosity is just the clarity with which we can experience things. So the essence of thoughts is not in their content or meaning particularly, but more in the energy, the clarity, and the emptiness, the complete fluidity of the thought process, of the mind, the process of mind, the thought process. And how we experience this is actually also in this chant, or how we can come to experience this is also stated in the chant. Awareness is the body of meditation. Whatever arises is fresh. So fresh meaning now, immediate, here and now. And fresh meaning clear and vivid. This clear awareness that we experience when we're able to rest in that is how we can come to see the essence of thoughts, because we're not so caught up in them. We're able to let go. So whatever arises is fresh, the essence of awareness. To this meditator who rests simply without altering it, that's what we are learning to do in meditation practice, is simply see our experience without trying to change it in any way, without judging, without analyzing. So much meditation instruction, particularly in the Mahamudra tradition, is about what not to do. And then finally there'll be a very simple statement: rest naturally. As we've talked about before, that thoughts self-liberate. We don't need to do anything to make them go away. They go away naturally, sooner or later. And it's not even really a question of getting them to go away. It's a question of seeing them for what they are. In the Buddhist teaching, there are 4 foundations of mindfulness. The first is mindfulness of body. The second is mindfulness of feeling. And what this is talking about is not feeling in the sense of emotion, but feeling more in our very quick and immediate reaction of I like it, I don't like it, or a more neutral feeling. It's pleasant, it's unpleasant, it's neutral. And the way to work with that, as well as the third and fourth foundations of mindfulness of mind and mindfulness of phenomena or dharmas, altogether, again, it really comes back to the same thing. Just resting in awareness and just seeing it without giving in immediately the desire to make things different, to make things better. Just to see it for what, just see it as it is. Be with ourselves as we are. So rest simply without altering it. And when this happens, then we're able to see something of the essence of thoughts and the essence of emotions. The Vajrayana works with everything that we experience. Nothing's rejected. No thought, no emotion, no experience is all comes out of the basic fresh essence of mind, clarity, emptiness, luminous emptiness. There's even practices in Mahamudra where you attempt to deliberately generate kleshas and then try to, rest and see the essence of the klesha itself. The idea is not to give in. I was going to read a little bit from, actually I still will, let's just say just a little bit about, there is a chapter in Trungpa Rinpoche's book, The Myth of Freedom, titled Working with Emotions. And within that chapter, the first reading, the first section is titled The Dualistic Barrier. And it's really well worth reading in terms of being able to relate to emotions. What he says in there is that ordinarily, in a neurotic way, we have two ways of relating to emotion. We either act them out or we try to suppress them. And what he suggests actually is there's a third way, that we can just be with emotions, that we can just see them, become one with emotion. And this is how we begin to transmute, is by being able to simply be with our experience just as it is. And as Trungpa Rinpoche said then, once we have this ability to stay in awareness and just simply see without reacting, without giving in to the desire to make things different or better in some way, or fear that things will get worse, or any kind of hope or fear at all, that's where the process of transmutation begins to take place. And he actually talks about it a little bit in this chapter, The Dualistic Barrier. He says the intelligent way of working with emotions is to try to relate with their basic substance, the abstract quality of the emotions, so to speak, the basic isness quality of the emotions. The fundamental nature of the emotions is just energy. And if one is able to relate with energy, then the energies have no conflict with you. They become a natural process. So trying to suppress or get carried away by the emotions becomes irrelevant once a person is able to see their basic characteristic, the emotions as they are, which is shunyata. The barrier, the wall between you and your projections, the hysterical and paranoid aspect of your relationship to your projections has been removed. Not exactly removed, but seen through. When there is no panic involved in dealing with the emotions, then you can deal with them completely, properly. Then you are like someone who is completely skilled in his profession, who does not panic, but just does his work completely, thoroughly. We've been discussing how to deal with consciousness, the last stage of the development of ego, and we've also dealt with the prior stage of concept. When we speak of dealing with them, it is not a question of eliminating them completely, but of really seeing them and transmuting their confused qualities into transcendental qualities. We still use the energies of thought, the energies of the emotion, and the energies of concept. So it's a chapter well worth reading, but I think it relates very directly to what we are asked to do, or what we experience in the Bardo of Dharmata when we encounter the wrathful deities. That what we experience are, with the wrathful deities in particular, visions that can be quite horrific and terrifying. And to the extent that in our practice and in our lives now, we're able to, again, simply be in our experience, resting in awareness, without altering it, that's where the transmutation takes place. And that's what we're asked to do. In Shambhala terms, we're asked to hold our seat rather than get panicked or react, because it's fear. It's fear that makes the visions of the wrathful deities unworkable. And with this, the incredible intensity of our reaction, which throws us so that we lose our seat, so that we're not able to stay in awareness whatever arises. So I hope all of that's helpful. I just wanted to say something about our practice now, how that prepares us to live our daily lives, but more particularly how it relates to the experiences in the Bardo, and how intense experiences in our life now are like the experiences that we have in the Bardo. So with the Bardo of dying that we talked about before, we're really dealing with our ability to let go. to relax, to settle into, to dissolve into luminosity. With the Bardo of Dharmata, we're really it's still working with letting go, but in this case, learning to let go or work with fear. Fear and fearlessness is a very important part of Trungpa Rinpoche's Shambhala teachings. And he would say that fearlessness is not the absence of fear, but rather is going beyond fear. And again, in the same way, what we're asked to do is to be able to rest in our experience, rest in awareness, without altering, without immediately reacting in a way that where we're trying to change or get away from our experience, rather than simply seeing it and being able to look further. So with that, let's begin looking a little bit at the Book of the Dead, or again, liberation through hearing. So at this point, we've been through the experience of the peaceful deities, and for whatever reason, we haven't recognized. So what it says in here is, in the Book of the Dead, is, up to now, there have been 7 stages in the dangerous pathway of the Bardo of the peaceful deities. And by being shown at each of these stages, even if one has not recognized, he will have at another, and boundless attainments of liberation occur. So if we're able to recognize, we attain. But although many are liberated like this, sentient beings are great in number, bad karma is strong, the neurotic veils are heavy and thick, the unconscious tendencies last for a long time, and this cycle of confusion and ignorance neither wears out nor increases. So there are many who are not liberated but wander downwards, although they have been shown accurately in this way. So then, after the meeting by the peaceful deities in Vidyadharas and Dakinis is over, the 58 blazing, blood-drinking, wrathful deities will appear, transformed from the previous peaceful deities. But now they are not like they were before. This is the Bardo of the wrathful deities, so one is overpowered by intense fear, and it becomes more difficult to recognize. The mind has no self-control and feels faint and dizzy. But if there is a little recognition, liberation is easy, because with the arising of overwhelming fear, the mind has no time to be distracted, and so it concentrates one-pointedly. So we're dealing in this stage of the Bardo as well with a different type of intensity that we encountered with the peaceful deities, and really what it comes down to is, again, recognition. Do we recognize what we're seeing as the projections or the self-display of our mind? Are we, and just as in a dream, there's an appearance of self and other, but it's clearly all a creation of mind. In the same way, in the Bardo of Dharmata, whatever we experience, whatever we see, as powerful or frightening as it might be, still is a projection of our mind. It's still some aspect of mind that in some way we don't recognize as being ourselves. You can think of the wrathful deities in a lot of different ways. In some cases in the Mahayana, the wrathful deities are actually considered protectors. And the idea is that they have this wrathful power, wrathful energy, wrathful compassion, in order to meet ignorance with even greater force. Actually, I know sometimes people have, we've offered the recitation of Trungpa Rinpoche's sadhana Mahamudra, and people have participated in that. And you can think of that practice, and especially the working with the mantra in that practice, and all of the things that we can reflect upon in that practice as a way of building up or energy, so that we're able to deal with, in that case, spiritual materialism and attachment to ego. But it's the same thing. It's wrathful power to meet ignorance. And to overcome ignorance with an even greater force. And in a lot of ways, some of the things that we experience in working with this intensity really come down to how well, again, in our daily lives now, we deal with intense situations, the intensity of our own passion, aggression, and ignorance, and the intensity and the power of the true nature of our mind, the clarity and wisdom that exist within us. And to the extent that we're able to see clearly and identify with our true nature, the more open we are to ourselves, the less difficulty we have when we meet these kinds of challenges or are confronted with these kinds of possibilities. It's said that when the wrathful deities are seen as fearful, that they represent, in reality, our own unconscious emotions, our own unconscious fixations and reference points, our own what we cling to. They represent exactly, when we perceive them in a neurotic way, they present exactly where we're stuck, what we can't deal with, what we won't face, what we are afraid of, or what's unrealized in ourselves, especially when they're seen as external. So as in the beginning of this chapter, she presents some information to us to help orient us to the wrathful deities and what we're going to experience. And I just wanted to go over a little bit of that before we get into the very elaborate detail of the visualization or the appearance of the wrathful deities. So she says, although the wrathful deities are no different in essence from the peaceful Buddhas, again, ultimately they're no different from the peaceful Buddhas because they're no different than the true nature of our mind. They're the as she says, they're the self-display of our awareness itself. So although the wrathful manifestations are no different in essence from the peaceful Buddhas, their appearance can be horrifying to someone who has never contemplated them before. The consciousness of the dead person in the bardo is also becoming more and more bewildered and exhausted as the experiences of the bardo continue without being recognized. So in this sense, it's no different than in daily life now, as when we're caught up in habitual mind, when we're caught up in our patterns, when we're caught up in our ignorance or in our absorption in some kind of ego-oriented endeavor. The more we get into that, the more bewildered and exhausted we become. So it's in that sense, it's no different. She says, if one reacts with horror or aggression, these negative emotions will propel us in the direction of the lower realms. So again, it comes down to recognizing, being able to hold our seat, being able to rest without altering it and seeing it for what it is, and realizing that it's no different than the nature of our own mind. On the other hand, if there is the slightest glimmer of recognition, the intensity of the situation actually helps us to focus the mind. And that's just what it was saying, what was said in the reading from the Book of the Dead, that because there's so much energy brought to bear, that if we are able to have some glimmer of recognition, if we are able to have hold our seat to whatever degree, our mind is that much more concentrated. So again, it comes down to having some connection, some familiarity, and in that way, we're able to have some recognition, which allows us to actually experience the wrathful deities in a way that opens us up, rather than running away and shutting down again. She says the wrathful deities are part of our nature, just like the peaceful deities. They are within us, yet they also appear to us externally. They do not belong to the individual ego, but to our non-dual nature. They do not belong to the individual ego, but to our non-dual nature. To the extent that we relate to these experiences on the basis of our individual ego, then we will misperceive, we won't recognize, and we will become terrified. We will end up wandering or running to the lower realms. Anyway, the point is, as she says, we can understand them both as within and without. Seen externally, she says, they are expressions of the most intense awakened energy poured forth in response to the ignorance and suffering of sentient beings. Again, the title of this chapter, Wrathful Compassion. It's like if we're not able to relate with the peaceful deities, then a greater energy, a stronger message is needed to wake up. Or to put it another way, this energy, as she says, or to put it another way, this energy is the fundamental, self-existent, compassionate nature of the awakened state, the same nature that's present all the time. And in the bardo, we're directly exposed to it. So at this point in the bardo, or in daily life, again, when we're really caught up in habitual pattern, because we haven't recognized and we're becoming more and more involved with ego, we tend to react with greater self-protectiveness. And it's this self-protectiveness, this sense of self existing separate from mind's projections, that creates the fear and panic that makes it difficult to relate to the situation. We immediately want things to be different. We want things to change. And again, to go back to what I was saying in the beginning, this is where developing or experiencing our capacity for simply being with our experience without altering it, which is what we practice in meditation, becomes so important at this part, this part of the bardo. Because then, once we're able to hold our seat, rest without altering it, then we can look further, as Trungpa Rinpoche said. And it's when looking further that we begin to actually have some ability to transmute. We can actually see the essence of thoughts, the essence of emotions, the essence of the wrathful deities. So again, anyway, she says the spontaneous, again, referring to the presentation, the appearance of the wrathful deities, the spontaneous display of enlightenment has not changed, but now we perceive it as fiercer and more threatening. And then as our internal experience is really the wrathful deities, like the peaceful deities, are none other than our true nature, the abiding state, what she calls the self-display of awareness. It's luminous emptiness, clarity that's unbound, that's boundless, that's energy and its energy and its original undistorted purity. When this energy is misunderstood and unrecognized, then the energy can manifest in evil, destructive ways. But when it is recognized, then it manifests as wisdom and enlightened activity. So again, really, the over and over again in the Book of the Dead, Liberation Through Hearing, as in the Vajrayana, we're asked again and again to be able to recognize clearly what the nature of our mind truly is. So anyway, she says, whatever appears in the bardo is a more dramatic, raw, and naked form of what happens during life. And she says, as examples, that we experience something of the wrathful deities, particularly in situations that can be the most difficult, challenging, abrupt, powerful, perhaps painful situations of loss. It's when we're most challenged to hold our seat, when we're most challenged to simply be in awareness, because it's so easy for us to allow habitual patterns to take over. And yet when we can, there's tremendous power and energy there. And again, because of the intensity of the situation, there's that possibility of our mind being able to focus in a way that we might not when we're, in